subject of today, have trusts had their day? Now, trusts have been around for literally hundreds of years. Back in the Middle Ages, knights used to use trusts, or so-called trusts, because they would go away to battle, they'd leave their family behind and their property behind, and of course there's a good chance they might die and never come back. What would happen to their property? It could and would be lost quite often. So what they started doing was asking individuals, who eventually became known as trustees, to look after their property while they're away, so that when they return from battle, hopefully return from battle, the property would still be there for them to continue the enjoyment of and to protect their family. So trusts traditionally have been an instrument for bloodline protection, if you like, rather than a tax dodging instrument, which the government seems to think they are. Hence some silly rules that have come in the last few years, legislative changes that haven't been well thought through. They've had a huge impact on trusts that now get taxed quite heavily and don't have the benefit they used to have. So for example, pensions freedoms, so-called, was introduced in 4 or 5 years ago now, 2015, 4 years ago as we speak. And whilst a great concept in theory, the fact that is that you can inherit pensions, they go down the bloodline, they go down generation after generation, potentially tax-free forever, believe it or not. So not only saving inheritance tax, but if the pension holder dies before 75, the whole pension pot remains tax-free forever. Whereas if it goes into a trust, it's taxable in full. It's subject to all the taxes: income tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax. So why on earth would you leave your property into trust these days? Particularly if you're age over 75. And let's face it, a lot of us will live to age 75. If your pension goes into trust post 75, you pay an immediate tax charge of 45%. Why on earth would anyone put a pension into trust and pay such an enormous tax bill? So what other things have come in recent years? Well, we've also got something called RNRB. For those of you not aware what that is, everybody gets what's called a basic rate band. In other words, a tax-free amount of £325,000 when they die, tax-free from inheritance tax. There's an additional tax-free band called RNRB, or Residence Nil Rate Band. Now, the problem with this relief is you only get it if you leave your property to future generations. So you leave your property to your spouse, then to your children, and then to grandchildren, etc. Well, if you do that, you qualify for the so-called RNRB, which is worth £175,000 per person from 6th of April 2020. Well, £175,000 residence nil rate band plus the nil rate band of £325,000 means £500,000 per individual, inheritance tax free. Well, if you're a married couple, that's £1 million. The problem is many wills have been written in a way to leave assets into trust, for example property, rather than leave the property to children, which means those individuals are denied the residence nil rate band. For a married couple, that's worth £350,000 of inheritance tax relief, which means an inheritance tax bill of £140,000 if you don't get it. So again, it's a disadvantage of trusts. A third reason why trusts aren't so popular these days is that there was a famous case some years ago called the Rysaf case. And what this related to was an individual set up trusts on different dates. And as a result, each trust qualified for the nil rate band of £325,000. So if you had 10 trusts, you had 10 £325,000 nil rate bands, inheritance tax free bands for 10 trusts. The problem is the government a few years ago brought in legislation to treat all these trusts as though they were set up on the same day, meaning instead of 10 times 325,000 in that example, 3.25 million inheritance tax free, you got one allowance of 325,000. So 3 very good reasons why trusts, in my opinion, have largely had their day.